It looks like you're in the market for a car, and you have a few grand saved up. Sure, you could go out there and maybe get a nice used car like that Nissan, but is that really what you want? You don't want to get laughed at by your friend driving that new slick luxury ride now, do you? Do you want to drive around in what used to be someone's backup car with a history of spilled apple juice and dried up snot?
Well, I guess not.
What if I told you there's a way to get a nice, expensive looking car, but for not a ton of money?
You're not gonna tell me to buy an Audi A4, are you?
No.
Oh, good, because, to be honest, I probably wouldn't have enough money to hire a bankruptcy lawyer after buying one of those. That's enough of that. Here's my top 5 premium looking cars for under $5,000. So, number 5 is actually the Lexus IS 250. Now, I know, in the first video, I ragged on the car really hard, but hear me out. It's actually a very, very capable car. It has a really good reliability. It's available in both rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive options. Very technologically packed. Actually, probably one of the most technologically packed cars on this list. There's a lot of good things to love about it. It's extremely stylish. I mean, the body lines are incredible. But there are a few drawbacks. First, it's very underpowered. It's a 200 horsepower, 2.5 liter V6. It just does not get up and go as you probably want it to. If you are a bigger person like me, you're not gonna have a good time with the seats. The seats are definitely very comfortable if you have a smaller frame. Definitely not comfortable at all whatsoever for bigger people like me. I had to sit in it with a pillow most of the time, and even then I still couldn't get comfortable. I mentioned a few other things. There are a couple of quirks as far as reliability, mainly with the instrument cluster and peeling paint on the wheels and things like that. But honestly, overall, you can easily get 2, 3, maybe even 400,000 miles out of that car. So if some of these drawbacks really aren't that big of a deal to you, this is going to be a really good choice. The BMW 5 Series. Now I have to say, this car has aged extremely well. I mean, if you look at this design, it just looks incredible, even today. Now there are some really nice things about this car. Of course, I just mentioned the design, it looks great. Same goes for the interior, it's a really nice place to be. It's aged very well. Not the BMW iDrive system that they have, but the rest of it is aged very nicely. The materials and everything's all really nice. If you opt for a lower trim level, so I'm talking your 525s, 528s, and even the 530s, those are all going to be fairly reliable cars. There are some small quirks that, things that fail from time to time, but I have seen these cars hit 500,000 miles. It can be done with proper care and maintenance. Now, of course, your mileage may vary. I've also seen them fail as soon as 200,000 miles, but still, it can be done. Now, drawbacks. If you opt for something a little bit more exquisite, like the twin turbocharged 535 or the V8 540, you're gonna have some issues. The twin turbo model, turbo failures happen all the time. There's also brake booster failures on the higher trim levels, so especially the V8s. So you could be driving down the road and you hit the brakes and the pedal's just very, very hard and you're gonna have a hard time stopping. Not exactly the place you wanna be in. Now, really quick before we get back to the rest of the cars, I just wanna mention that I'm doing a giveaway. Now, we've had extremely fast growth over the last few weeks. I just started this channel and we're already at 129 subscribers. So guys, thank you so much. But I just wanted to let you know that at 200 subscribers, we are going to be doing a giveaway. I mean, your chances of winning are going to be pretty high because there's only going to be 200 of you. So definitely stick around, hit the subscribe button if you guys haven't already, and let's just go ahead and keep going. Another flaw that these cars have is especially with the 535, is these have fueling issues. So, you know, fuel pumps can get very expensive. You could find yourself spending tons of money on that. And it's probably not something you really want to deal with, you know, unless you really have to have that extra power and everything. Another thing is the steering on these cars. Now, these have very, very nice steering. They handle really well. It's very confidence inspiring when you're going down the road. But unfortunately, every 50,000 miles or so, you're going to find yourself replacing control arms. They wear out fairly quickly compared to some of the other cars on the list. So yeah, about every 30 to 50,000 miles even, I've seen them fail. So that's something to keep an eye out for. So next on the list is going to be the Infiniti G35. Now, you may be able to find the G25 variants out there as well, but I'm mainly talking about the G35 right now. This car definitely has a lot to offer. When it came out, definitely looked a little bit ahead of its time. It's a very beautiful car. The materials used
Today, Junior!
on the interior and things like that are all very nice. I will say one drawback on the interior though is while some of the materials are nice, the buttons and things still feel very Nissan. So that's something to be aware of if it bothers you that much. But you know, I feel like those are some things that could be overlooked, especially considering the price point. Another really nice thing about this car is it's the most powerful one on this list. That 3.5 liter engine actually makes 306 horsepower, which is a lot, especially considering what some of the other cars make. Another really nice thing is it's available in rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, so you could have it both ways. But yeah, that engine is gonna be phenomenal, especially on the highway. Something about the interior too that's really nice is that even though this car is gonna be from the mid to late 2000s, it's quite technologically advanced for the time. So depending on the trim level you pick up, of course, you're going to be able to find them out there with heated seats, leather, a plethora of technological features, GPS navigation, you know, all that good stuff. It's going to be right up there with that Lexus that I mentioned earlier. Now, as far as drawbacks, there aren't too many, but there are a few to be aware of. One of the main issues that people complain about is random timing chain failure. Now, while there are owners out there that have gotten excellent mileage out of this car, they've hit 200,000 miles and above, there are some people that have complained with a lot less mileage than that. And when that happens, it's typically catastrophic. And then the last thing that I want to talk about on the G35 is the lack of headroom if you have a sunroof. So if you're tall like me and the car has a sunroof, it's going to be a little difficult. So I definitely recommend sitting in one first before purchasing.
Are you sure about that?
But with all those things set aside, the G35s are going to be a great option for a lot of you out there. They're in that price point. They're hovering around the $5,000 mark. It depends on the mileage on the car, but it's definitely a great buy and it's something you should consider. The next car on the list is the Acura TL. Now, this is one of my favorite cars on this list especially. Very, very awesome looking cars. The design has held up so well over the last few years. It's actually really funny because this model looks way better than the model that replaced it. And a lot of other people agree as well. So this is actually sort of stayed relevant over the years. One of my favorite things about this car is actually the engine. So the base engine is a 3.2 liter V6. It has VTEC. It makes plenty of power. It's in the mid 200s And honestly, it's fine for daily driving, and you could get out of your own way. Passing somebody on the road is not a problem in this car. Sure, it's not the most powerful, but it's all in all just a super great engine, very, very reliable. And I say that from personal experience. The interior is actually pretty decent. Now, it's not as nice as some of the interiors on some of the other cars on the list, but it's definitely a pretty strong contender overall. Another really cool thing I like about this car is that it was available with a manual transmission, which makes me very happy because, manuals are a dying breed these days. They made a high performance version of this car. This car came with a Type S model that was sitting above the base. And the Type S is really cool. They put a bigger engine in it, 3.5 liter V6. Makes plenty of horsepower. It goes like heck, sounds amazing. And if you could find one of those in the $5,000 price range, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's definitely a lot harder. It's way easier to find a base model, a 3.2 out on the market compared to a Type S. But if you can snag a Type S, it's really worth it. They are awesome cars. Now, some of the drawbacks. Unfortunately, the earlier models, so 04, 06, they did have sort of a weak transmission. It's kind of hit and miss on your on what you're going to get as far as life expectancy. Now, I had an 06 personally, and I had 245,000 miles on it. It ran great. I had no problems with it when I sold it. But that being said, I don't expect everybody to hit 245,000 miles on their early model Acura TL. Now, if you opt for a later one, you're going to get a little bit of a better experience. They did replace the transmission. It was a stronger unit, at least from what everybody tells me. So definitely go for one of those if you can. But if you can't, I mean, as long as you get a car with some maintenance on it, you should be okay. Now, my number one choice on this list, it has to be the Mercedes E-Class. I know maybe some of you might disagree with me, but please hear me out. This car, of course, depending on the trim level you get and everything, is probably one of the most reliable German cars you could buy on the secondhand market. It has a really good reliability.
No! No!
Now, these cars are not without their faults, but as far as the engine, the transmission, the main stuff, they are honestly fairly bulletproof. I've seen them with more than a couple 100,000 miles on them. They last, they just keep running, they keep chugging along. Now, if you opt for an E320, it's gonna have moderate amount of horsepower. It's like 224.
It's okay. I'll learn to live without it.
It's slightly more than the Lexus, but definitely I recommend, if you can find one, an E350 at the very least. It's a great engine, it's a good car. Interior quality is unmatched, especially compared to some of the other cars on this list. It holds up very, very well over the years. In my experience, I've seen a lot of these cars, dashboards, everything, it just holds up. It really does. This car, especially compared to a lot of other cars in the segment, this car is hands down the quietest and the most comfortable ride that $5,000 could possibly buy, at least with reliability. Headroom for a big guy like me, awesome. It's great. I have no issues with it. It's going to be a very comfortable car for people of all sizes, which makes it very easy for me to recommend. But it does have sort of a design flaw: the brakes. Now, this car has had a massive recall over the brakes. Basically what ends up happening is that the ABS module ends up going bad, and sometimes prematurely. For the most part, what most people experience is that while you're driving down the road, on the dashboard it throws a light, it tells you to stop and pull over, that there's something wrong with the brakes. Now, another issue that these cars have, this is specifically to the E350, is it does have some timing chain issues. Now, it's not very widespread or anything, but with some mileage on these cars, I have seen cases where the timing will jump a tooth and the engine starts to lose power and it runs a little funny, then you have to spend a few $100s getting that fixed. So that is something to be aware of with the E350. If you're lucky enough to find a diesel E-Class, which is, again, it's fairly difficult to find, but if you do find one, they are awesome cars. Definitely the most reliable one of the bunch. They're very, very, very strong engines. All in all, it's an amazingly good car. I highly, highly recommend it, especially if you can find one for the right price that maybe has some service history. They are out there for $5,000 or less, I'll just say that. So that's my top 5 premium looking cars for around $5,000. Now, do you guys agree or disagree with me? Let me know down in the comments. What would be your top 5 for this sort of category? Don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe. And guys, thank you so much for watching. If you guys like this type of video, let me know and I'll keep doing more of them. So anyways, I'll catch you on the next one.